I guess it was about 4 days or so after the incident at the casino that the first tape came out, the one that was taken outside the elevator. Mom, you've seen it?
Of course. I didn't want to see it at first, and it took me a while, but I did, because I had to. That's my child, and if something happened to her, I don't care what it is, I want to see it.
Now, many women you encounter will tell you they have come across domestic violence. Few will say little or nothing about it. But many women have died, others have been scarred in the hands of the men in their lives.
My name is Chris Knight of Night Vision Media that produced this film you're about to watch. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to Leontine Evans. Leontine, who also goes by Teen, will not only share her story with us, but also educate us on how domestic violence has impacted men, women, and children, but more particularly, Black women at an alarming rate. Teen, after suffering years of trauma herself, decided to study the human brain as it relates to relationships. And after graduating from Bellevue University with a degree in psychology and behavioral science, Teen began living out her passion by becoming a domestic violence intervention specialist. Today, Teen currently works as the survivor engagement specialist for Survivors Rising. There, she helps to empower and uplift survivors by providing education and resources that encourage survivor voice and self-sufficiency. A survivor at some point in their life usually wears a mask, whether it is a physical mask of makeup to cover up bruises or a sad face, or simply masking the pain caused by abuse with a perky attitude. Abuse causes victims to hide a part of themselves, but Black survivors in particular are tasked with the pressure to appear as strong, and they may feel the need to wear a mask to keep up that persona. Survivors wear a literal and sometimes physical mask for many reasons, but if we continue to hide the side effects of abuse, those in positions to help will never fully understand the tumultuous cycle of domestic violence. It's time to unmask survivors and provide a safe space for them to share their truth with others. We cannot continue to share the rainbows without helping people understand the storms that cause them.
So the beginning, I was 14 and he was 18, and I was new to the city, I was new to the school, and he was like this big, bulky, beefy football player. And
it all started when I was about 19 years old. I was fresh out of this internship that I did in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
In the beginning, everything was great. It was almost like a fairy tale, almost like I had my knight in shining armor. We met when we were both deployed on orders.
See this guy, super tall, super attractive, and we began talking, exchanged numbers.
If I would have known then what I know now, he wouldn't have stood a chance. But when he walked through the door with his six-pack and his country accent from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, I was his. There was no getting to know each other. We didn't take any time. As soon as he started talking to me, he was my boyfriend.
We went to a place called, I think it was called Pink Martini, cute little martini bar. When I went to pick him up, I went to his door and he opened the door and he said to me, "Oh, I would tell you that you look nice, but I don't want you to get a big head." And at that time, I took that as a compliment. Just kind of like, "Oh, he said I look nice." We had a good time at the martini bar. I think we went on a couple of dates after that. And then one night he stayed over, and at like 2 o'clock in the morning, he told me that he forgot to feed his cat. So he left, and so I knew he was just on BS. So I stopped talking to him for a really, really long time, and it was nice when I didn't talk to him. And then all of a sudden he comes back around and he's professing his love. And I remember my apartment complex had a secured door, and he was standing outside the complex beneath my window, and he's like hollering and screaming how much he loves me and how much he misses me and please talk to him. And at that time I really thought it was cute. I thought, I was flattered that somebody was willing to embarrass themselves like that for me.
It began real quick. We went on dates. Just in a week's time, out to dinner, dancing, clubs, things that young people do. We spent a lot of time together and getting to know each other during that time. As time went on, he was just there for me and seemed like he was a good crying shoulder whenever I needed him, very supportive in helping me through that portion of my Army career.
That was my first serious relationship, and everything about it initially was really great. Our relationship was kind of a secret of sorts because I wasn't even supposed to be dating at that point. I think in my mom's mind, like I wasn't gonna start dating until I was like 16 or something along those lines. And so as far as she knew, I didn't have a boyfriend. And I think that also kind of worked in his favor. And he was really sweet in the beginning. Like everything that I thought that I could have wanted in a boyfriend, with my limited boyfriend experience at that time. But it was great. It was magical.
The thing I had on my mind the most was I wanted to get married. And so I was very serious about being in a relationship. I valued being pure, as we called it. So I was a virgin at the time. And I was heavily involved in my church. And truthfully, that's where I met my ex-husband, was in the church. We were at a concert. It was a hip hop artist named The Truth, and he was there. And I had known him in passing, but not in depth. But when I saw him, we just started having conversation, and we cultivated a friendship. And so we were friends for, I don't know, maybe half a year before it even turned into like a relationship. But I had fun with him. We laughed, we joked. He was a youth minister. He was very attractive, very charismatic, someone that was cool, just someone to chill with. And I definitely didn't think he was capable of doing what our relationship led to.
I remember kind of how we used to talk to each other, and it was like friends, but it was really catty. And I think that was kind of the push and pull of kind of trying to overpower or break me down. And for a long time, it just didn't work. There would be things like I would buy something new, and I'm feeling myself and I look good, and he'd say something to the effect of, "Oh, is that what you're gonna wear?" Or, "Oh, you look fat." Oh, things like that. And at that time I wasn't internalizing that, but I would just lash out and I'd say something back to him like, "Well, you always look fat." But eventually After hearing those types of things for so long, I did start to internalize that. And I want to say probably a year and a half after he moved in, his daughters came to live with us. They were 10 at that time, coming from Chicago. And it seemed like once they moved here, everything drastically changed. He was no longer trying to be a family guy. He wanted to be gone all the time, lying about places that he was at. He was just in his own world, and it was myself and my 2 boys, his 2 girls, and he just kind of did his own thing.
He was active in church, I was active in church, and so that's where our friendship evolved. And our friendship was great. But the minute that we made it official and we started dating, that's when it really started getting kind of toxic, but I didn't know it. To me, when I had an image of abuse, I just thought of like physical abuse and verbal. That was very apparent to me. Verbal, somebody cussing you out, dogging you, and physical, hitting you. But I had no idea about emotional abuse. And so when we were dating, that's what really was in play. Even in the dating part, the courting part of our relationship was emotional abuse, but I had no idea. You know, a lot of times he'd make me feel like terrible about myself. He'd withhold his affection or give affection for awards if I did something that he liked. Again, I didn't know it. Like, all I knew is I felt distance and then I felt loved, so I just went through the motions. And so, you know, when I was feeling lonely and I felt like he was distant, I wanted to connect with him. And I also thought that he was my husband. We set a date. And long story short, I ended up having sex with him. And I got pregnant the very first time I had sex. And so we had mentors in our lives that were pouring into us, and they really, really strongly influenced that we get married sooner than when we expected, because I was pregnant. And so we got married. When we got married, I was probably about 3 to 4 months pregnant at that point. And my mother did not come. My mom told me that when she looked in his eyes, she saw rage. And she used to be a correctional officer. And so she told me the rage that she saw in men that were abusive, she saw in his eyes, and she didn't even come to our wedding. And so I was like, my mom don't know what she's talking about. He'd never do that. You're tripping. And long story short, about 2 months into our marriage, so at this point I'm about 5, maybe 6 months pregnant, that's when it got physical for the first time. I remember where I was sitting. I remember what the fight was about. I remember I was trying to get away and he threw the keys into like this dark place where I couldn't find it. And the most important thing to me at the time was just protecting my baby. And ironically, I'm pregnant right now. But I just wanted to protect my baby. And, you know, after, you know, the abuse occurred, I remember just sitting on the edge of the bed, similar to how I'm sitting here, and just like, how is this possible? Like, how is this my life? Like, how did it even get to this point? And then I started coming up with a way on how I would get away. I was trying to get away in the first place, but he didn't let me. And I just started plotting on how I was going to get away. But I didn't leave that first time.
That he was thoughtful and he was so encouraging. Like, whatever I wanted to do, he was like my biggest cheerleader. You know, you could do it, whatever it was. And he just really made me feel like there was nothing that I couldn't do. There was nothing that I couldn't do, and that he wouldn't be there to support me through whatever it was. And it was exciting. You know, I remember I used to sneak out at night to go see him. So he lived all the way on the other side of town, and he would walk all the way to my house. He had a car, but it was broke at that time. So he would not sneak out of his house, but he would walk all the way to my house, and then we would walk back to his house, and then he would walk me all the way back to my house, and then he would walk home. And I mean, just the thrill of like sneaking out and being with your boyfriend and not getting caught, and just the conversations that we would have on the way, walking to and from. Just, I felt like I could talk to him about anything.
After he basically tells me that there's going to be a wedding on Saturday, and I better not embarrass him in front of his family, I kind of got into fix-it mode. Thought I was crazy, and I pretty much just asked them, you know, I just need to pull this wedding off. We called it the production because we were all actors, and our job was to make the scene look nice, make everything, you know, look happy and picture perfect. So we kind of went to work.
So we were probably about 6 months into the relationship, and then things started to change slowly. Like before, where he would be very forthcoming and sharing information and teaching me new things, you know, his tone became really short. His answers became a little shorter. Not all the time, but just enough that you'd be like, okay, well, maybe he's having a bad day. That's weird. That's not normal. But it would make me try harder to keep him in a better mood, because, well, this isn't the him that I thought he was anyway. This isn't who he's been all of this time. So something must be really wrong with him. Is it me? It made me start questioning myself. Like, okay, well, did I say something to make him mad? Like, did I do something wrong? And so it was just little things like that.
So after the first time that he put his hands on me, I shared with you that we were really involved in the church. So we had some mentors and that counseled us. And so I actually told them. I didn't keep it a secret from everyone. I told our counselors, and they encouraged me that if he did it again, I should call the police. And, you know, when I think back, and this was 11 years ago, when I think about how they handled the conversation, I mean, they told him it was wrong, but there wasn't any true accountability there, you know? It was really surface. And so after we met, to be honest with you, after we met with them, he tried to use sex as a weapon and as a way to produce a counterfeit intimacy. And to be honest with you, I mean, I didn't feel like I was in a position to be able to say no. He didn't force himself on me, but I felt kind of disgusting, to be honest, because there wasn't any true remorse. It seemed really manipulative, like his tears, how it led to him trying to be intimate with me. Our relationship was void of intimacy. Like I shared, even when we dated, he would withhold things from me, and then he would try to reward me with intimacy or affection or compliments when it suited him, when he was getting something out of it.
I went back and got my dress from the tailor. My friends and I, we made centerpieces for the reception. We bought tons and tons of different things to decorate the church. We decided to have the reception in our backyard because I had got the money back from the reception hall. And one of my good friends, definitely my best friend, and she just said, I can't support you. I can't support you doing this. And I remember crying on the phone to her and telling her, I know this isn't smart. I know this is dumb. But the level of fear of what he would do, it outweighed the fact that it didn't make sense. When his family was sitting in the church and they were looking at my side of the church, and I remember someone saying, his aunt saying, where's all her family? Isn't she from here? At that moment, I felt like, why am I doing this? Once you got married, even though the production wasn't meant to be real, we were now legally married. And because he wanted this so badly, a part of me felt like once you get married, snap of a finger, you're a different person. and he wasn't. So I was just kind of like, you know what, this is it. I don't have anything more in me. So I started apartment searching and found a place, put a deposit down, and one day he went to work. I called my dad and my sisters over, and we packed up the house and moved everything into the new place probably during a whole work shift.
Well, things started to change. He became, I guess you could say, verbally abusive, accusing me of sleeping with people, or particular people that were close to us. He wasn't acting the same towards me, kind of standoffish in a way, but I didn't think anything of it. I just figured, we were, doing what we were supposed to do. Maybe he was a little stressed, so I didn't think anything of it. Probably the biggest thing was not being able, I didn't have any family near me. I was 1,000 miles away from home. So no one could really tell that there was anything wrong with me. Everyone thought we were so in love. Everyone, was really rooting for us. But behind closed doors, it wasn't always the case, where it got to the point where things actually got physical. And at that point, I was actually pregnant. It was almost as if it angered him more that I was pregnant. And we got into an altercation a couple of times, and I had to physically defend myself from him. And even after that, the next day, I still had to get up and go to work. Bruises, marks. He had bruises and marks, and we just, sad enough, we kind of just laughed it off with the group, but it was really a hurtful thing coming from someone that I was actually truly in love with.
So, there's a lot of questions, even questions I had. Why won't you just leave?
I always see the good. Like, I see the good, I see the potential. And sometimes I ignore the reality because I can still look at you and I still see who you can be. And I can still see, honestly, who God put you on the earth to be.
So I remember one time we were in his car arguing, and we were outside of my house, and we get into this argument. So I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm getting out of this car. I'm not doing this with you. And so I hop out of the car. And so he hops out of the car. And I don't know why I just didn't go in my house, but like seeing him get out of the car and just kind of like knowing where this is probably going to lead, like I take off running. And there was this laundromat around the corner from my house. So I take off running, and at first he starts like trying to chase me on foot, but then he realizes, nope, I'll just get in my car and I'll find her. That'll be quicker. Or at least I assume that's what he was thinking at that point. And so I could see him like walking up and down the aisles, and he's looking, and I am terrified because I know that if he finds me, if he catches me, I already know what this is going to be. I already know what this is going to look like. And so I sat there for what seemed like forever. And by the time I finally did get down and I did leave the laundromat, he was gone, thank goodness. But even after that, like, I still didn't leave him. What led up to me finally finding the strength to leave was that I was bringing a child into this world, and I knew that I couldn't bring her into this world in that type of situation. Being able to move out gave me that first step to break free from the situation. And after I had her, I did allow him to come and stay with me. Even though the physical abuse had stopped, it was still mental abuse.
I'd like to start this off by saying he brought out the absolute worst in me. And I lined all of his shoes up and took them out of the box and put cat poop and cat litter in his shoes. When he got a new house, and this was well after we were together, but I still had a lot of those feelings where he was doing so well, and he's just kind of really trying to make me feel bad about where I was. And I kind of felt like I was doing really, really good before I met you, and then it went down, 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 and you found someone else to leech onto, and now you're going up. And I felt like, well, how dare you? Like, you held on to my coattails and you brought me all the way down, and now you're holding on to somebody else's coattail.
So eventually, I mean, like I said, I didn't have the strength to leave him, and he just decided he was going to break up with me. And at that point, like, for as much as I had wanted to get away for all of this time, I was devastated. Like, oh my God, like, what do you mean that you're leaving me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I was heartbroken. And then I started going into overdrive, trying to figure out how I was going to win him back. Like, how crazy is that?
I remember before I found myself in an abusive marriage, I would watch Lifetime movies, and there was always these images of what a woman, a victim of domestic violence, looked like. And she was typically small, petite, very quiet, submissive, and didn't want to stir the pot. Well, even when I was being abused, I was still not this quiet, submissive woman. I still would say, no, I don't think that's right. Or I would still say, this is what I expect, or this is what I need, or I didn't like it when you did that, or whatever the conversation was. I was still somewhat vocal about what my expectations were. And that's what led to, you're being disrespectful, or if you wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done that. So I started believing some of those, what I shared earlier, the emotional abuse. Like, well, maybe I did have some of this coming because I'm not just this passive woman. And the word, and this was told to me when I was contemplating leaving, the only thing that really gives you permission to leave in the word is if your husband cheats on you. So is abuse valid? I mean, he only did hit me, in that one incident, even though I almost blacked out, from being choked. He hasn't done it in a while. Things aren't as bad as it's been. I'm pregnant, right? Let's think about that. I'm still pregnant. So I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to go to my doctor's appointments? And how am I going to still get WIC for afterwards, for formula? I mean, there were so many things that I had to sit and think about. Like, how is this really logistically going to work? I would be at war constantly. Should I leave? Should I not? He hasn't hit me again. He treats me like crap, but at least he's not hitting me. And so it wasn't just easy to go. And again, the first time I left, that's when he got abusive. He threw the keys. I don't even know what he did with them afterwards, but man, if I do try to leave, things are going to get worse. I don't want things to get worse. I've been out of that relationship now for 10 years because my daughter is 10. And I still, it doesn't require much effort for me to go back to where I was in my mind. But those were real. And the biggest thing, I know I mentioned it, for me, the biggest thing is I want it to be pleasing to God. And to be honest, some of the things that were told to me in that season, in that space, was spiritually abusive, and I'm dealing with emotional abuse, and I'm dealing with physical and verbal. I was just a battered person, didn't even know it. I was just trying to survive.
The biggest thing that I have learned in the aftermath is I am the shit.
So being free of those situations and not having to wear the mask has been the most liberating experience of my life.
So after he was gone, life really was better. Financially, things didn't change, because he wasn't really helping much. But my mental state got better. I was able to be a productive mother. I was able to raise my child and, raise her, with morals and values without compromising those, having, someone like that around.
To, am I going to go back? Am I not? And I thought about going back every single day. I mean, we had a daughter together. At the beginning, I didn't cut it off completely with him. So he still was in my ear. But eventually I was just like, I'm not talking to him at all. That was super helpful for me to cut it all off.
Fortunately, I feel like I moved on too fast. I never really healed from that particular incident. That person's gone, you're not thinking about that person, you're not in love with that person anymore, but the mental and emotional scars that are left from situations like that make it hard for you to love in other situations, which is something that I'm still suffering with today. My current relationships are suffering because I don't know how not to be on guard.
Like hearing that you look happier now, that's like a top tier compliment right there. Somebody just saying like, you smile now. Like people can hear it in your voice, they could see it in your smile and the way that you walk, the way that you talk. Like it literally is like having a weight lifted off of your shoulders.
Even during that time. And so, eventually it led me to divorcing him. It took me almost an entire year to make that decision. But once I did, during that whole time, that year that I was separate from him, I never went back. And during that time, he tried so many different tactics to get me to come home. He went to counseling. He told me about all his counseling sessions, cried to me, weaponized his vulnerability to try to manipulate me to come back. He threatened to kill himself. There's so many things that he did. He was like, let me pull everything out of the hat to get her to come back, and I just wouldn't go back. So sometimes he got very aggressive and very demanding, which then let me know I really can't trust you still.
I am so much better at seeing the pink flags, recognizing who and what is not for me, as well as how to recognize who and what is for me. Just being in a place where I can trust myself again, and I do feel like I can trust my own judgment, and I don't, I don't know, I can't stop smiling when I think about it. Like, I need better words.
I don't have to deal with anybody's crap unless I want to. I'm telling you, just knowing that and feeling that, and the way I walk, the way I carry myself, the way I talk, the people I allow in my life reflects that I know I'm the shit. And if you want to be around me, you have to treat me a certain way. You talk to me a certain way. And not to be mean, but if I don't like it, I don't have to deal with it.
Truth is it's so worth it, because on the other side of the mask, literally taking the mask off, and I could really get emotional, there's liberation, there's freedom. And when you really think about those who've really had to fight for freedom and liberty, it's not easy. It doesn't just come easily. It requires work, it requires tenacity, it requires resiliency. And the biggest thing, it requires courage, and courage is separate from strength for me, because strength is defined in so many ways. Like for me, I've had to learn that weakness is strength. What I perceive as weakness is strength. Weakness is my vulnerability. Weakness is me being like, that is hurtful. Like weakness is saying, can I just rest in you, Sammy? Like, I don't want to have all the answers. I don't want to always be strong.
I do find myself more open to being loved, and more open to friendships, and getting to know people better, but it is still a struggle, and with everyone, with strangers. Sometimes I won't even say hello, just so I don't have to engage or assume anything about another person, or give them the ability to engage me and make myself vulnerable.
I guess what I would say to somebody who's currently wearing a mask is you deserve better. You deserve so much better than what you're putting up with right now, what you're tolerating right now. That there is life and love on the other side of what you're currently experiencing.
I would tell her that you deserve better. That no matter how hard you try to rationalize his behavior, it is still his behavior. And I would also tell you that you don't have to deal with it.
The best advice that I can give is to make a plan. Make a plan. Let one person know what that plan is. Someone that you trust literally with your life.
I wish that people understood that there's no face of domestic violence. There's no particular type of woman. You know, it's not that you come from a certain background or a certain income level or a certain skin tone or any of that. It could happen to anyone. You know, it's easy to say what you would do if you were in the situation. You know, you hear people all the time saying, well, because I would never. And you never know what you would do until you were in it. I never thought that I would be in half the situations that I was, but I was.
For Black women in domestic violence, I feel that we aren't given the rights, the human rights to be looked at as victims, to be looked at as people that can be victimized. We're always looked at as the strong, the loudmouth, the attitude, the aggressor. When people don't really understand that being Black woman and growing up in America, you watch and you see how people treat, our men, even our children, and just like any woman in any race, you stand up for your children, you stand up for your men, and we have seen it, our entire lives.
One of the questions that I've heard constantly throughout my time with my wife is, how is it being with a spouse that comes from a background such as your wife's, as far as coming from domestic abuse, and how have you handled that? I'll say for me, the first thing that when I met Marissa, wasn't right away, but that's something that she had explained to me and told me what she had been through. And that was something that I didn't take lighthearted. Having growing up with some experience in domestic abuse, when it comes to my own parents, for example, I know the seriousness of the nature of that, and that was something that I was intentional about letting her know that I'm here. I'm a safe place for her. I'm here to not to harm. I'm here for you, essentially.
Unmasking survivors. What does that mean? Every single day, you go to work, you go to school, you go to church with people that you really don't know. It doesn't matter how long you have socialized with them. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. We don't know their stories. And so, as a survivor myself, you start to think about the way that you portray yourself to people and the way that you are at home. And there's so many parts of abuse that have to be hidden just because you don't want people to see that part of you. And whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional, no matter what kind of abuse it is, you have created a persona that you want people to know you as. And a part of that persona is not abuse. You have created this strong woman, this educated woman, this financially stable person, or as Facebook would say, someone who has goals, right? But behind closed doors, there's something totally different going on. So every single day when you walk out that door, you're wearing a mask. You are masking emotions, you're masking your pain, you're masking your abuse, sometimes even masking bruises just to get through the day so that people aren't asking questions. People don't look at you differently. People aren't judging you. Judgment is the biggest reason why we wear a mask. If I got in a fight with my abuser, with my boyfriend in the parking lot of my job, I can't go into work crying and being emotional and vulnerable. I have a job to do. So you put that mask on, you put that smile on, you perk up, and you go on about your day. It's not their problem. There's been people who have told me their story of abuse, and they are a pastor's wife. They're the policeman's wife. They are the councilman's wife. And they do red carpet events, or they do community events, and something happens at home, and you put that makeup on, you put that smile on, and you handle your business. You put on a united front so that people don't see you. The mask hides people from seeing who you really are, what you're really doing, and allows you to continue to be who they want you to be and who they see you as. 1 in 7 women will experience some type of abuse in their lifetime. Any room that I've ever been in has always had more than 7 women. The person that's sitting right next to you may be a survivor. The person sitting right next to you may be a victim, and you never know. But the idea that strong people don't go through this is the idea that is alienating so many from getting help. There are several different types of abuse, and most of them are intertwined. And so you have domestic violence, physical abuse, but that isn't just punching, that isn't hitting and kicking and leaving bruises. Domestic violence could be broken down into financial abuse, emotional, mental. When you are degrading someone, when you are gaslighting someone, which is making them think that they're the problem and not you. So if the light bill didn't get paid because you didn't have the money, but instead of that, it's if she would have gotten you a better job, or she would have filled out the application that you asked her to fill out, you would have the money now to do that. So those gaslighting techniques that make someone feel like they are less than what they are, that mental play in your head that makes you question yourself, is also abuse. In the state of Nebraska, intimidation is also considered abuse. So if someone throws something at the wall in your direction, even if they didn't intend on hitting you, just showing that power, reminding you of that could have been you, is also a form of abuse. You could actually be arrested for that in the state of Nebraska. Those intimidation tactics, making someone feel threatened, making them feel unsafe, is a form of abuse because it's psychological. It literally reminds you, if I can hurt this, like if it's a pet, if it's a material thing that means something, if I can cause damage here, you would be next if I don't get whatever the case may be. So it's not just, there won't always be bruises. There won't always be a physical thing that you can see. There may not even be an emotional connection. There may not be tears. I've had police officers walk away because they didn't see any abuse happen. But the damage that is done on the inside, the emotional pull that you have, that mental abuse, is just as bad. And when you're in that cycle and someone says, just leave. I literally had a police officer come to my home and tell me if he had lived there for 6 months, it was his house too, and I could leave. Well, this is me and my son's home. So to take a child out of that home, and then CPS is involved in all those things. So you can't just leave, one, because of the danger that comes with leaving. 70% of women are actually killed in the process of trying to leave an abusive relationship versus the actual relationship. The relationship itself is actually safer because you are with that person. You are still providing something from them. You're still filling a need. But once you try to leave and they feel like you are leaving them, you're putting them at risk of being without you, that fear of being without you, it can cause people to do things that maybe they didn't even think that they would do, or threatening to call the police and leave and things of that nature. So the most dangerous part about leaving an abusive relationship is the physical escape. You've heard of women getting killed in the car or him coming back to the house and finding that she was packing her things and things of that nature, or other way around. Maybe she was the abuser and he was trying to leave. Whatever the case may be, the most toxic, hardest part, the most dangerous part is the physical escape. Once you do leave, there's that grooming that happens, that happened in the beginning, that also happens in the end. When you realize you're away from this person who's provided certain things for you. So then the grooming starts of, can you make it without them? As a survivor, one of the pain points is not being seen and heard throughout the whole situation. However long the relationship may have been, how long the abuse has gone on, you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel valued. Doing this documentary has given me the opportunity to share with these women and to make them feel heard and seen, to give them the opportunity to share their stories and to help educate others of what abuse looks like and what a strong Black woman looks like when they don't have to be strong all the time, when they get a moment to be weak, when they get a moment to be transparent and to just allow other people in their space to support them. There's not enough support in the community that allows Black women to just be a woman, to be vulnerable, to be soft. And this documentary has given the opportunity for myself and so many others, and hopefully it opens the door to allow organizations to know that it's okay to be strong, but every emotion is valuable. Whether it's sadness, anger, happiness, we need to experience all emotions, and it doesn't make you less strong. It doesn't mean that you don't need help. It means that you need support to understand what those emotions are and to be allowed to feel them.